In lieu of a mandatory face-to-face transition training, FCPS is bringing to you Transition Tip Tuesday. We hope that our monthly episodes provide you with meaningful training in a convenient and flexible platform. Welcome to the first monthly episode of Transition Tip Tuesday, brought to you by Career and Transition Services, where all of our episodes focus on student-centered transition planning. This month's episode is titled Capturing the Student Voice. In today's episode, we will cover how transition plans drive the IEP, how active student participation is required, and what are the steps to developing realistic and achievable career goals. In 1997, FCPS moved the transition plan from the back of the IEP to the front of the IEP because teams agreed that the transition plan should drive the IEP, and we want today's episode to bring back that declaration. The transition plan charts a course for graduation and life after high school. It identifies the student's post-secondary goals and outlines the steps necessary to achieve them. Keep in mind that plans may change several times as students' interests and skills develop. So how does the transition plan drive the entire IEP? The transition plan identifies interests, preferences, strengths, and needs along with post-secondary career goals. Transition objectives are what the student is going to do this year to help them achieve their career goal. The annual IEP goals with supporting objectives, what we call the area of need, should then focus on academic and functional skills the student needs in order to move from school to post-school outcomes. So now that we've covered how the transition plan drives the IEP, who is actually responsible for transition planning? The answer is everyone has a role. Since the transition plan drives the rest of the IEP, the transition plan cannot be completed in isolation. Transition planning is ongoing and outcome-oriented, based on collaboration between students, families, school and adult service personnel, and the community. The most important person in transition planning is the student. As a team, we want to focus on the I in IEP. It is always important for the case manager to interview the student before an IEP. When the student's voice is heard, IEP meetings focus on what is important, and that is the student's future. This is the student's chance to take an active role in planning their education and make school relevant to them. Now we're going to watch a video on capturing the student voice.
Hello, my name is Trevor Christensen with Career and Transition Services, and I'm here today to remind you that every IEP should start with a discussion of the student's post-secondary goals, and that the entire contents of the IEP should be designed to equip the student to reach those goals. Transition planning is a fluid process. The key to effective transition planning is to start early with long-range, measurable goals in mind. The plan should then be revisited at least once a year to see if it continues to be appropriate for that particular student.
Well, Sky, you know me. I'm the Employment and Transition Representative at Madison, and we're here also with your WAT teacher. You know Miss Wilson, don't you?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. And we're here to talk about your transition plan. Are you ready to do that?
Planning a student's transition from school to post-school options is a critical part of the individual education program, IEP process, during the middle and high school years. Transition planning is ongoing and outcome-oriented based on collaboration between students with disabilities, their families, school and adult service personnel, and the community. Starting in grade 8 or at age 14, every IEP in Fairfax County Public Schools should include a transition plan. According to Virginia requirements and Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, transition plans must include measurable post-secondary goals based upon age-appropriate transition assessments. They also must include transition services, courses of study needed to assist the student to reach the post-secondary goals, and consideration of the student's strengths, preferences, and interests. Our job is to help students answer these questions. Who am I? Where am I going? And how will I get there? These questions become increasingly important as the student reaches transition age. Only through thoughtful and coordinated planning over several years can our students be expected to have viable and successful transition plans in place by the time they exit FCPS. Now, while some students may have a general idea about their plans for the future, it sometimes can be a difficult task to bring post-secondary goals to a realistic and attainable level.
Is your career goal still to be a surgeon at this time?
I guess I don't want to be a surgeon.
Yes.
Because my mom's a surgeon.
So I want to talk with you about that because not that you can't be a surgeon because you can be whatever you want to be. I noticed that you mentioned one of the possible barriers to reaching your goals is too much school. And that I also noticed that you don't really love school all that much.
I'm not a huge fan.
Okay. If you plan to be a surgeon, there is a lot of school post-high school. You'd have to go and you'd have to do an undergraduate degree, which is about 4 years. And then you'd have to go to med school for another 4 years. And then you'd have to do a residency, which can last anywhere from 2 to 5 years. So that's a lot of extra school. Have you thought about that?
No.
Which is totally okay, Ashton. And that's what this process is all about. We're trying to help you figure out what is going to fit your needs and your interests.
How do we handle a situation where the IEP team may not think that a career goal is attainable for a student because of their disability or academic challenges? Students will often say that they want to be a lawyer because their dad is a lawyer or their grandmother was a judge. Or students may want to say they want to be the next Taylor Swift or LeBron James, famous athletes or musicians.
What is your career goal?
I'll be an actress.
So you want to be an actress? We're going to talk about some of your strengths and capabilities right now.
Many students are also unsure of what they want to do in the future, whether it be post-secondary education, additional training, or direct employment. Keep in mind that we do not have to guarantee that a transition IEP career goal will be accomplished, but we do have to show that we are helping students take the necessary steps to make progress towards achieving career goals.
Maybe we could take a look at your homework again, and you could indicate what you can do at this point in time at Madison to become an actress.
Right.
So if your student tells you that he wants to be a football star, you need to document in the transition IEP that you are giving the student opportunities to prepare for that goal. It is the case manager's job to help the student identify transition benchmark objectives that will prepare the student to reach their post-secondary goals.
Since you know that you're interested in the medical field, let's just base it off of that. So how about instead of saying, I want to be a surgeon, let's say, I want a career in the medical field.
Okay.
Does that work for you? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Whether we think a goal is attainable or not, we always start with the end in mind. We want to be future-oriented. We ask the students to think beyond high school, visualize what they'd like to be doing in their mid-20s, and then go through all the steps they would have to take to get there, identifying any barriers that might get in the way.
Working towards you wanting to become a surgeon or something in the medical profession, one of your goals would definitely be making sure you pass all those diploma required courses, especially those maths and science classes. Especially in that field, you're going to want to have at least a B average in those classes. How do you feel about that?
Math, I think I'm doing pretty good, but science, I'm not doing too hot.
Okay, what is your grade in science?
I think a C.
Okay, that's not terrible.
What are the steps for helping students develop realistic and achievable career goals? Before an IEP meeting, case managers need to gather and review transition assessments, such as interest inventories, job coach reports, career assessments, the academic and career plan, and other informal assessments. Additional information on assessment can be found in the Transition Resource Guide on the CTS intranet. Assessment data identifies students' strengths, interests, and goals. Without assessment, we cannot plan, set, or achieve realistic goals.
I understand from your job coach that you're also stocking the candies and other things in the theater, and that you're doing an excellent job.
If we are updating a transition plan, we should review last year's transition plan and determine if new transition assessments are needed. If objectives were not met, a conversation can begin around other related careers. The case manager could then begin a conversation around the stumbling blocks that kept the student from reaching the objective, and the student may even want the opportunity to identify different careers and to participate in new transition assessments. Case managers need to collaborate with all team members. In addition to school staff, the case manager should also obtain parent input.
My mom told me that I might not be organized enough.
Okay, so that's something we can work on.
Parents can provide feedback on observed skills in the home and community as they relate to education, employment, and independent living. It is also important for the case manager to interview the student, since it's the student's future that is the focus. The Transition Toolkit for Parents on the CTS intranet page also has a transition planning checklist for students and parents.
My mom told me to ask for help if I ever need anything. So how could I get more organized? Is there people that help me?
That's a great question. And actually the next part of your transition plan, we talk about self-advocacy. Do you know what self-advocacy means?
No.
Okay, so self-advocacy is exactly what you were just saying. You need something, you need to know how to get it, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a question or if you're falling behind in a class, you need to self-advocate, which means you need to go to a teacher or ask the appropriate questions to get the help that you need.
Finally, the case manager needs to facilitate student involvement during the IEP meeting. Every student can participate at some level. It is up to the case manager to determine the extent to which the student will be involved in presenting the plan. Student involvement in transition planning provides student ownership over the goals.
Your IEP is coming up, and all these things that we just talked about will be reviewed at your IEP meeting. Mm-hmm. And eventually, I'm not going to put it on you right now, but eventually I would love to get you to a place where you're comfortable enough to kind of share these on your own, with me or someone else there, like your case manager, guiding you. But this is a very important part of your IEP because we want to make sure you are taking those classes that you need toward your career goal.
Research shows that if a student is involved in goal setting, they will be more likely to achieve their goals because it builds self-awareness, self-determination, and self-advocacy.
At the IEP meeting, you can ask questions. That's all part of that. Do you remember that word that we talked about?
Self-advocacy.
Yes, good job.
Career and Transition Services thanks you for taking the time to view this training video. If you have any questions regarding transition services with Fairfax County Public Schools, please contact our office at 571-423-4150. Thank you.
So what are the steps for transition planning? As we saw in the video, before an IEP meeting, gather and review transition assessments. Review last year's transition plan and determine if new transition assessments are needed. Collaborate with all team members. Obtain parent input, interview the student, and facilitate student involvement during the IEP meeting. 2018 school leavers were asked to answer the following questions. To what level were you involved in your IEP? This slide shows the response to that question. As you can see from the data, more work supporting student IEP involvement needs to be done in the district. Stay tuned for a future Transition Tip Tuesday on student-led IEPs. This concludes the formal portion of this training. In order to receive a recertification point for this training, we would like for you to send your ETR an email on what you know about transition, what you wonder about transition, and what you learned today from the training. Please email your ETR with your answers by December 1st, 2019. We will send you a certificate of attendance for 1 recertification point. Thank you.